My energy's a little bit mellow today. I did film that story yesterday, but unfortunately my phone storage was full, so the video got deleted, and I don't feel like when I repeat a story it has the same oomph factor. So I'll leave it for another day. I'll keep it at the back of my mind and share it with you another day. And in terms of what that guy had said to me that I completely forgot to share with you yesterday, the one who was messaging me, who's the witty one, I won't share it because it was a private conversation. I think it's not right to share other people's conversations. If you're wondering why I've shared so much about our fearless and erroneous comrade, the reason is because he broke the rules of relationships or connections. He broke the rules. He was unfair. He was dishonest. He wasted people's time, and there was no accountability at the end. Therefore, then, I don't feel the same level of duty of care. And I think we have to share this type of information as well so that everyone's aware and knows what to look out for. So that's why I put him in a different sort of category, and I can discuss him quite freely. And I'm still protecting his privacy. I haven't told you the majority of the things that went on in that week that we were in touch. So I'm still sort of protecting him in a sense. This morning I caught very quickly, so I haven't thought about this video, and I decided that I'd only come on maybe once a week or when my energy was really great. But I did catch this John Griffin video, and when something just kind of enters my mind, I think I should just talk about it at that point. Otherwise I just forget or it loses its momentum. So this video was titled, Stay or Go, the decision that could cost you everything. I watch every single John Griffin video, and I've mentioned to you guys that it doesn't apply to me as a woman, as in the type of woman that he's talking about is not who I am. But I really love listening to people's stories, and I think you learn so much from people, and he's eloquent, and this particular topic is interesting to me in terms of relationships between men and women, so that's why I listen to him, and there's just always something to learn. So I'm going to have my cup of tea, a little bit of chocolate, to try and wake myself up, and then I'll go into this in a little bit more detail. But I haven't thought about it very deeply, so yeah, you might want to speed this up in case there are a lot of pauses in my video.
Have you ever heard of the Chinese finger trap? You know, where you stick your fingers in the two ends of this tube, and the minute you try to pull them out, the tube collapses in on your fingers, making it impossible for you to get out. That's kind of the situation he's in. On the one hand, the marriage is so bad, he can't stay in it. I mean, it's just miserable, and she is miserable, and he is miserable, and it just sucks on every single level. I mean, I could go into some details, but most of you guys can imagine. It's just untenable. There's just no staying in this marriage. Staying in it has caused him over the last year to gain like 60 pounds. Just listening to him talk, I could tell his sanity was being strained to its limit. He broke down and cried on several occasions in our conversation. And that's not something that most men will do in front of other men that are relative strangers, you know, as he's pouring his guts out to me about how bad this marriage is. But on the other hand, he can't leave because she's got it by the short hairs. They have a disabled child who's very young, like 3 years old. And he's afraid that if he leaves her with this child, that this child will be poisoned against him for the rest of his life. And not to mention that she will, you know, take him to court, you know, in family court, and family court will, you know, essentially erase him financially. And so he's stuck. One way or the other, no matter what he does, from his perspective right now, it feels like he can't do anything to relieve the pressure. And I try to guide him through it. I try to...
One of the things that he says, you may have chocolate in my teeth. One of the things he says is that he's afraid that the wife will poison the child against him. This is something that always takes me by surprise when I hear this type of thing men's channels. So this video isn't, this is not an attack on women. We've discussed this many times. We have erroneous people of all sexes, both sexes. If someone is worried that the partner is going to poison their child against them, this tells me one thing, and it's that that partner, in this case the woman, she's not righteous, she's not decent, she's not logical, she's not considerate, and she has a dark essence or a manipulative essence or a unfair essence. So before you get into relationships with people, I think one of the things that you really have to look out for are all these things. As an example of my erroneous comrade friend, the fearless one, the red flags are all there. He's dishonest. He's been given an opportunity to take accountability and he doesn't. He's got a slightly aggressive tendency and he goes on the attack. He's unfair because he's wasting people's time. So these things, dishonesty, unfairness, manipulativeness, did I mention aggressiveness? Are you looking out for all these things before you even get into a relationship? I hear a lot of things about how people do this whole bait and switch, and I never used to understand this, because how can you possibly pretend to be someone that you're not for 2, 3, 4 years? It doesn't make any sense to me. And actually the story that I was going to tell you yesterday is sort of related to this. I'll have to remember, I'll have to connect them at some point, not in this video. But it made me think of a story that I didn't tell you one time. I wanted to tell you it, but it felt a bit unfair because I was discussing someone's private life. But it was related to a woman in Japan who had been in a relationship with this guy, and he worked at the same company as her. Very successful guy. And if you don't know, a lot of Japanese women, they sort of park themselves in these top companies. Very educated girls park themselves in these top companies so that they can meet these very successful men, and then once they've got married, they leave the workforce. In a sense, fair enough, because the workforce in Japan is brutal. Women would not be able to survive in those conditions, and they're sort of ostracized as well, because they're not allowed access into the places where all the actual deals happen. Never happens during the office time, happens after the office hours when they go out drinking. Women cannot possibly maintain that drinking culture long term. It would just damage their health. It damages the men's health. So women are sort of forced out of the workforce in Japan, which this is one explanation for why it's really important to them to sort of nab these successful guys and settle down very quickly. So I don't judge it. It is what it is. But this girl, what I found really quite baffling about this girl, and also all the stories that I hear on John Griffin's site or Manosphere content, is that this woman, she didn't particularly seem to be in love with this guy, or she loved him, but she also hated him. He treated her really, really badly. He'd been sent abroad to work at one of their partner companies, and every time she went to visit him, she would complain to me that the first thing that she would do is she'd spend a few days just cleaning his apartment and tidying his apartment, and he never seemed to be very grateful for it. So she was holding out for this ring, but at the same time she was always complaining about him. And I couldn't understand it, because if you really love yourself, don't you want to be happy? Don't you want to we have this one life, right? Don't you want to enjoy this life and make sure that every day is a happy day, or as happy as it could possibly be, or at minimum that at least you're content? So I couldn't understand why she would want to marry someone who seemed to really sort of irritate her, and who she had a animosity towards, and who also didn't respect her. It was very clear from the stories that she told that he didn't really respect her. So that's one example of this whole bait and switch thing that I hear a lot about, that these women fake being lovely and whatever, and then once they have the ring on their finger, their true personality comes through. And in my mind, I don't think you could possibly hide who you are for such a long period of time. It's impossible. So that means that the other person, he or she is missing all the red flags. So you have to be hyper aware. You have to be hyper aware. That's one thing. The second thing is, so why would people want to lose their own life just for some kind of security? That's baffling to me. That's wild to me, that we've got this one life and you would end up marrying someone who you're not really in love with, or who you just want security with, and you lose your own life in the process. And even more selfish is that the other person will lose their life because you don't really love them. I cannot think of anything more selfish. Now, you can not care about yourself, but why screw up someone else's life? Again, this is not a woman, me attacking women. This could apply to both situations, men or women. The second thing was, it was in my mind and it's just gone. The second thing was, there are people who just lie like they drink water. And out of all the things I mentioned, selfishness, aggressiveness, this, that, manipulativeness, this, that, and the other, the one thing that you're really looking for is a person who just lies seamlessly and effortlessly. A person who lies seamlessly and effortlessly has no concept of the harm that they're doing. They have no concept that they're taking away your choice. As an example, let's look at my friend again, because I know that people like concrete examples, including myself. Our erroneous comrade friend, fearless friend, he has no concept that he's putting me potentially in a really difficult position. Not only professionally, because he's communicating with me in a personal way, because he's asked for my number, which he really shouldn't have, but also that he's wasting my time. As you get older, time becomes even more precious. You become hyper aware of time. Every single day in my years feels like maybe a month or 6 months to someone who's much younger. So this sense that he's taken that week of mine. That week of mine is so precious. Now, the great thing was that I got energy from him initially and at the beginning, and it was in the long term, or in the long run, I saw it as a very positive experience, and I saw it as a great way to land into 2025. However, he doesn't know that that's how I see the world, or that's how I prefer to look at things. He doesn't know this. From his position, if he was a decent person and a righteous and honest person, he would be thinking, I'm wasting someone's time here. I'm lying to them. I'm taking away precious time that they could be investing in other things. So honesty and care for other people's time and their lives and what happens to their lives, if you are not observing this in a person that you're dating, I just cannot believe that you would be able to miss those clues for maybe 2 years or 3 years before you get engaged and married. that's why I really truly think that men, particularly since they mature less quickly than women, men shouldn't even really be thinking about dating or settling down in their 20s. Unfortunately, women, I've mentioned before on this channel that I really love dealing with older women. They're always very, very easy for me to deal with. And I think something happens with women as they get much older. If they weren't normal in the beginning, as they get older, maybe once they have children, because perhaps once you have children, you have to sort of lose your ego and you have to become the adult. Women go through this phase where they start to become less jealous, less conniving, less this, less that. Women's biggest issues, I think, are narcissistic qualities, and men's biggest issues, if you come across the wrong men, are dishonesty, psychopathy, and perhaps sociopathy, depending on how they were raised. Men's biggest issue, I think, is dishonesty from what I come across, and I think this is because they have to hustle. They have to hustle in a way that perhaps women don't have to. So both men and women have different difficulties and issues. So that dating period is your opportunity to see what type of person that they are. You also have to sort of look at their upbringing, and I don't want to say that people who came from difficult childhoods, or who came from a single parent family, or who didn't have a father in their life, etc., are in some way damaged or at a disadvantage. I'm not saying that at all. You can have one really great parent who could potentially give you everything that two parents could give. You could even have really not so great parents, but maybe you had a fantastic mentor, or maybe you had this drive in yourself that wanted to be the best version of yourself. So what you're really looking out for is, to a certain extent, righteousness and accountability. Righteousness doesn't have to be a religious concept. Righteousness is just someone knowing right from wrong. Righteousness is wanting to do no harm to anyone else. So in this video of John Griffin's, he was talking about how this woman would poison the child's mind against the father. Now, if you have a child who you deeply love, and even if this woman is in the right and the father is a terrible father, you wouldn't want to do anything to poison this child against the father, because it's not good for the child. What you can simply say is, your father and I didn't get along, or your mother and I didn't get along for these reasons, but I don't want to stop you from seeing your dad. I want you to have fun with your dad when you're with him, or your mother, whatever the scenario, okay? And eventually you will come to your own conclusions as you start to get older, and you leave it at that. Now, if the parent's a dangerous person, maybe they're on narcotics, or they have some kind of difficulty or issue, obviously you want to protect that child as much as possible, and you don't want that child to see that parent, because it might damage the child. But I'm not really necessarily looking at that example. I'm just looking at a situation where maybe a woman or a man is so vindictive or hurt by the process of the marriage or the divorce that they want to lash out in some way, and so they use the children as scapegoats. And this is where righteousness or accountability or honesty or decency, logic, these are things that you really should be looking for prior to a marriage, because if that person has those values prior to a marriage, they will still have those values after a marriage. You don't lose values like that. As an example, again, with our friend, our erroneous comrade, the fearless one, this situation didn't make me think, oh, the whole, all men are just, no. There are some funny people, odd people in the world, but for the most part, I hope and I pray and I think that we tend to attract the type of people that we are like attracts like. So it was just an unfortunate situation, which I got a lot out of, and I choose to see it like that. So what was I saying, you guys? So what I was saying is that it doesn't mean that I completely disregard my values and I start to behave badly like him just because he's behaved badly. No, I still conduct myself in the same way. If he were to get in touch with me at some point, I wouldn't lash out at him or get angry, or I would just say what I have to say. You lied to me. And the second time, not only did you lie to me, but you put me in a very precarious position professionally. Secondly, you had the opportunity to be honest because I asked you why you had lied, and you didn't take accountability at all. And for that reason, it's not possible to be in touch with you, because who knows when you're lying, when you're telling the truth. There's absolutely no way of knowing. Now, to lighten this story up before I go, because I've been quite serious this morning, I swear to God, I swear to the universe that this chap, this friend of ours, he's allowed me to just wax lyrical, make all these videos. So other than the fact that he was a positive situation. Do you remember situation? He was a positive situation in 2025. It's allowed me to talk at length about him. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, I was saying to you that his lying, if I could have given him an A+ for creative storytelling, I would have. I cannot help but admire the level of delusion to the point that he's created this world, that's this narrative that's so false that he's allowed himself to believe it, to the point that at any one moment he can insert little stories that are clearly a lie, but he's fed himself this world that he can just do that. That's terrifying to me, and at the same time, the imagination required for that blows me away. What an imagination. This is also connected to potential. Why do I have a soft spot for him? Because it's a loss of potential, and it keeps coming up in my videos. I'll link it in another video. So one of the things, on one of the days, I was getting tired of him. This is around the Sunday or the Monday. He was exhausting me. Maybe it was even the Saturday. I think it was a Saturday, perhaps. I was typing and it was too much. I'm not used to typing all this much on WhatsApp. I don't spend a lot of time on WhatsApp. It's a functional space for me. I've realised that myself and WhatsApp do not have the best of relationships because you can't hear my voice, and I don't really tend to use emojis, so you get the drift. So I just started going on voice because he's not understanding what I'm saying, and less than 10% of storage. I'm going to leave before it cuts me out and starts deleting files. The reason I got my video got deleted yesterday is because I got, you don't need to know. 1 minute, you guys, okay? So I started leaving him voice notes at one point because I needed to explain to him why he was being irrational in terms of how have I got caught up in a situation where this was supposed to be a professional scenario, but just because he now has access to my WhatsApp number, I'm in this really awkward position that I can't really pull myself out, because if I pull myself out, how is it? It's complex, right? So I'm in a situation where I just do not want to be in, all because someone gave him my WhatsApp number without asking me. I probably had said, yeah, give it to him anyway, but never mind. So I leave these voice notes. Apparently he was in one country, and then he flew out to another country in the time that I was speaking to him. In fact, he'd flown out, in the whole time that I was speaking to him, he'd apparently flown out to 4 countries. In total, he'd been in 4 countries by the time he arrived. He was supposed to arrive in London, okay? It's normal in this kind of world. It's normal. But his situation was a bit unrealistic because the timeline was so short. But he's young, he's whatever. He's enjoying his wealth. So I leave these voice notes for him. He told me that he was going to see a game in Kansas, an American football game in Kansas. So apparently he rocked up to Kansas. So I'm imagining him at this football game with Travis Kelce, I don't even know if that's his name, out on the pitch, and this kind of scenario. So I leave these voice notes for him, and then obviously it's flat in WhatsApp. I can hear his rage in that flatness, because I can hear it. He's like, I cannot hear you. This is me adding stress to his voice, guys. He's like, I cannot hear you. I'm surrounded by people in the stadium. Cannot hear what you're saying. Can you just type it out? So I'm imagining him watching Travis Kelce at this game. I'm thinking this man's in this massive stadium with all these American football players, and this is so I just quickly I summarize what I've just said. I think this is what I'm saying, that in the whole time that I was speaking to him, he was probably in one country, maybe not in the UK, from the information that I found out about him, that I've sleuthed about him. Thank you, Colombo. Thank you, Hardy Boys. Thank you, Perry Mason. Thank you, Angela Lansbury. What was her name? Angela Lansbury. I'm going to get cut off. I'm going to go before files get deleted comes up. So this is what I'm saying, the level of detail and diligence. I've lost my trail of thought, but I'm going to go and upload this, you guys. The level of storytelling. Incredible.